Is Arkansas live this weekend against Texas? Market movement you should know about, and best bets. Before we get into that, Bobby, biggest game of the week. The USC Trojans currently catching 9.5 at Oregon with a total of 59.5. This was a Sunday morning coffee play for us. You can catch all of our Sunday morning coffee plays with me at about 8 a.m. Central on Sundays, where we played the over 56.5. So nothing but over money has come in on this total. I had the question for you Monday night, which was, how high is too high? And you said this total absolutely has to start with a 6. So now that it's Wednesday night, you've had a chance to gain some more insights, gather some more thoughts. What are you thinking now on USC Oregon? Is this total going to continue to go higher? Should we buy in now? And perhaps is the side too low? Is there still some value on Oregon laying the 9.5?
Yeah, I think we're going to start with the injuries on this one. Oregon tight end Kenyon Sadiq came back versus Oregon, looked great. 8 for 96, touchdown there. We still don't know the status of Decorian Moore. Wide receivers missed the last couple games for the Ducks. And speaking of Moore, Dante Moore played in his third straight game in the rain. This one was a little bit lighter than what we saw in the Wisconsin and Iowa games. But yeah, I'm optimistic about both offenses in this game. In Big Ten play, USC has played a bunch of defense-first physical teams. Oregon hasn't faced a passing attack. With Makai Lemon, Lane as well. Like what USC has, despite having, they have the number one pass defense. An opponent passing yards, top 5 in all, pass EPA defense. USC's offensive line, despite some injuries, has done a good job keeping Mayava clean. Just top 15 in offensive sack rate allowed. And if they can keep him clean, despite those injuries, I do expect the skilled receivers that USC has to test this Oregon secondary, which did give up a few big plays to Indiana in Autzen earlier in the season. On the other side, Dante Moore, he's filled right into the Dylan Gabriel Bo Nix model of efficiency there. And done a great job limiting mistakes that we've talked about on this podcast being concerned about with him. Right. But it's behind the multi-prong ground attack. And that's where USC can really be exposed. No Whittingham, Jordan Davidson, the cast of Ducks. They're going to be able to keep the chains moving here. USC is outside of the top 100 EPA per rush, 115th in rushing success rate. That's going to keep help the Ducks, and more create space down the field to create some open space in the passing game. You mentioned the total 56.5 on open, gotten up to that 59.5 range. Few 60s showing earlier. I saw some just 60 flats available earlier. I do just think 60.5, 61 is the right number for this game. And it's possible the game, the Ducks are able to grind away late. So I think if you're looking now, you didn't get the 56.5 with Corey on Sunday morning. I think the best potential play is looking first half in this one. There's 29.5, 30.5 available. It's potentially that could be the better look than looking full game. If the Ducks, maybe this game starts out hot and the Ducks sit on a lead and run the ball late. As far as the side goes, I'm 9.3, no play on the side.
A game with major ACC championship ramifications and playoff implications. Pitt traveling
to says this one matters.
Pitt traveling to Georgia Tech, currently the short road dog, catching 2.5, down from 3 on Sunday. This total currently sits at 62. Bobby, in this game, Pitt, obviously offensively, major step up in class against a Notre Dame defense. They didn't do anything, but their coach came out and said that maybe their focus was going to be on this game anyways. Georgia Tech, Haynes King, amazing heroics. I think everybody's seen the come from behind story against Boston College. They keep doing it. Now they're back home. Does maybe Georgia Tech's defense show up or maybe get a little bit better here at home? How do you think this game plays out? And really, is your handicap here going to be, can Georgia Tech's defense get a stop so that this Georgia Tech offense can get back on the field and try to score?
Yeah, the Yellow Jackets have played with fire multiple times this season. Obviously the 1-point victory at Wake Forest in late September, last week's 2-point escape at Boston College, and the Clemson game at home earlier in the year. And obviously here's the final ACC tilt with the chance to clinch the conference title spot. Tech defensively far from impressive, especially on the road, where this game is not outside the top 90 in traditional metrics like yards per play, defense overall, both rush and pass, same thing. 115th in sack rate, outside the top 100 in all success rates, and they don't turn you over at all either. They can clearly be had at that side of the ball. Meanwhile, Pitt, they've put up points in games specifically against bad defenses, especially since going to Mason Heitzel, who faced his first tough test in Notre Dame last week and got handled by the Irish defense there. In fact, actually now Heitzel has the same touchdown to interception ratio and completion percentage of 12-6 and around like 62-ish% as Eli Holstein, who was benched. Which I didn't expect to just notice that with them. Pitt, obviously, as I mentioned with Desmond Reed's injury, they haven't been able to run the ball. And I mentioned last week, it's not like this Georgia Tech defensive line has been getting a push. The key on this side to me is if Pitt, who is poor in the success rate metrics, can stay ahead of the chains here, because I worry about Pitt's, even against a bad Georgia Tech defense. They have played better at home, but I worry about their efficiency here. For Tech, Haynes King, who's on the fringes of the Heisman conversation still. Some of Tech's worst offensive performance still have come against teams with solid fronts. Duke has an underrated defensive line. They scored 27 with a defensive score there. Clemson, early in the season, good defensive line, 24 in that game. Wake boasts top 10, 15 defensive unit overall. They did score 30, but needed overtime to get there. In that one. Pitt stronger in the front seven, especially athletic at linebacker. But we saw they ran a little bit with Jeremiah Love with Notre Dame last week. If Narduzzi and the Panthers can somehow slow King and company in the ground force from the air, where Pitt is weaker, King still might be able to take advantage of a Pitt secondary and make some plays there. I know they play quite a bit of zone there. So and King has been less effective against zone, but it is more of a dink and dunk style offense in that case. So I'm curious how that plays out. Overall, I think the instincts tend to lean you to and over when you think about the two defenses, that there could be some offensive success right here. But I fear if Tech can't get the ground game going, Haynes King has to dink and dunk in the passing game, and Pitt just being generally inefficient, I think that's really hard to get over a total in the 60 when you factor this is nearly a touchdown higher than Pitt Notre Dame closed at last week, and we certainly believe Notre Dame is the best offense between these three teams here. Adding into this conversation on the side, I leaned Pitt early. I actually took plus 3.5 when it was available at FanDuel on Sunday afternoon. But after going through the breakup of the matchup, just to be frank, like I'm going to take some 2.5. Like I'm going to get out of that. I actually lean toward Georgia Tech getting the win here, being the better team at home and securing the ACC title berth.
Our final big game breakdown, the People's Choice Game of the Week. Arkansas at Texas. The Razorbacks catching 9 points with a total of 57.5. Arkansas has been consistently chaotic. This team cannot stop turning the ball over, and they consistently play to cover. So, Bobby, they're playing a Texas team that the biggest handicap for me in this game was Texas couldn't run the ball against Mississippi State. And that was super concerning, because if they can't run against Mississippi State, I don't think they can run at home against Arkansas. And that does make Arch Manning again have to step up and help this team win. So what do you think in this one? This was a Sunday morning coffee play for us. We got Arkansas plus 10. We've had some market agreement. I think Arkansas could be live in this game, as crazy as that sounds, considering they can't finish. But they've got to win one eventually. And this is a much bigger game for Arkansas than it is Texas, as Texas has Texas A&M on deck, and their coach may not be the coach at Texas next year. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I guess the people want to talk about an 0-6 SEC team. It's 0-6 in SEC League play, 2-8 overall in the season. But if we're being honest, Arkansas is much, much better than that. 1 point loss last week at Baton Rouge, 3 to Mississippi State, 3 to A&M, 3 at Tennessee, one to Memphis on the road in the Liberty Bowl, 6 at Ole Miss. Hell, even the 9-point loss to Auburn, it's a game that they were up big early. And obviously a quarterback change flipped that game in that one. Taylor Green's awesome. One of the most dynamic players in college football. Hogs are number 1 EPA per rush, top 10 early down EPA, top 15 late down success, top 10 offensive yards per game. And as you mentioned, the reason why the Hogs struggle, why they're 2-8, 0-6 SEC play, penalties, turnovers, and also Taylor Green's taking a ton of sacks. which I do anticipate being a problem against this elite Texas defensive front, which is really good at stopping the run and getting after the passer. When Green has time, I do think he's going to be able to make a play against Texas secondary that I do think is a bit average. Shifting over to the other side, to say something nice about the Arkansas defense's challenge is a difficult one. Outside the top 100, all EPA success rate metrics, except for 95th in rushing success rate defense. And while they turn the ball over a ton, they also don't generate takeaways. So they're consistently losing the turnover margin, which is why they're in the position that they are. Texas is an offense that should be able to muster something like they did against Mississippi State in comeback fashion. But as you said, they struggle to run the ball in that game. One of the connective tissues I've kind of noticed with Arch's success in SC play is to show how often he's been sacked. 6 times against Florida, loss. 3 against Kentucky, ugly win. 5 against Mississippi State. Again, that was a comeback win that needed overtime in that one. And 3 against Georgia, 25-point loss. And in Vandy and Oklahoma games that they won, 1 combined in those 2 games. Now Arkansas just average pass rush, 58 sack percentage. But if the Texas offensive line opens up here and they have time, I think Arch could get some points, in this one. The total opened 55.5, bet up to 57.5. Sides come down, as you mentioned. There's some 10.5s, 10s, and come through the key to around the consensus 9 that we're at now, implying this 33-25 final. And LSU was actually the first Arkansas opponent that didn't since week 2 to not score 30 points on Arkansas, just as a note there. As I look at this game, I think everything, the whole connective tissue to it, relies on the Razorbacks team total and what your thoughts are with that. If you like Texas, you probably like Arkansas team total under, as you think Green, they get after Green, sack him, create some turnovers. Right. And if you like Arkansas, you probably think they can get to the Texas back half, put up points to Texas, and maybe even hold Texas below 35 if they can get after Arch. Personally, I'm on the sidelines here. I kind of think this game looks more like LSU Arkansas actually than A&M Arkansas, which was 45-42. So I guess I lean under, but I don't see myself making this click. I totally see the Arkansas money at 10, but I think taking your lean and applying it to the team total is best at current market.
All right, let's jump to the market where I've got a couple questions for you here before we do the full market rundown. And we'll start with Michigan, Maryland. It's a Michigan team currently laying 2 touchdowns at circa 13.5, where juice 13.5 everywhere else. Total is 45.5. Bobby, should Michigan be laying 2 touchdowns on the road when they have the game of all games? The game's going to really make their season coming up next week.
Yeah, and this game's actually playing out in the point spread market similarly to Michigan Northwestern did last week. Michigan took some early money last week, getting out. I think that was like 10.5 out to 13 against Northwestern, then got bought back late Friday on game day. I think that had to do with potentially Michigan injury report there in that one, and of course the Northwestern. I don't know if it was right considering the box score in that one with 5 turnovers. We're kind of seeing that same pattern here. Definitely, with potential, maybe those guys from Michigan come back. Big Ten doesn't release injury reports just yet on that one, but certainly interested in maybe a low scoring game that we'll discuss later in this one.
Got another question for you on game number 169, Baylor at Arizona. This game has seen nothing but Arizona money. It opened 4.5. We're now seeing 7 in the market, with Arizona laying 7 at home. Baylor got curb stomped by Utah, and Arizona had a really nice win at Cincinnati that could have been a lot bigger than what it was. They stalled out in the red zone, had to settle for field goals. With where Baylor's season has gone and where Arizona is at on the upside, is this game close 7? And do you see value even in Arizona at 7, just knowing that they're going to go for it and Baylor can certainly give it up?
Yeah, I agreed with the early move for sure on Arizona. They deserve, an upgrade after Cincinnati, and probably based on their full body of work, Arizona's probably been a bit underrated for most of the season, especially against, teams in their class, which I certainly think Baylor is in. Baylor does, has seemed to kind of let go of the rope on their season. Very poor defense. It's just been also Sawyer Robertson, and he can't just do everything, quite frankly. Yeah. So sure, sure on the move. I don't know if, I think you'd have to see a hook to get Baylor buyers. I don't think it's going to blow through the 7, but I don't know if I would lay it now. I passed it, but I think the 4.5 was a good bet on the open.
Final game for you, I got a question on. Game number 201. Minnesota at Northwestern. Bobby, this Minnesota team has really struggled on the road. However, their road games have been against Oregon, Ohio State, and Cal. And in those games, they absolutely got torched. But this is a Northwestern team. It's a step down in class for them. What do you think about Minnesota here catching more than a field goal against a Northwestern team that typically is not in the favorite role? And if they are, they're certainly not laying more than a field goal, especially here with such a low total. I like Minnesota here. You can get a 4 over at Bookmaker. What are your thoughts here, Minnesota Northwestern?
Yeah, I wish you luck with your Minnesota ticket. It does seem like there's been some buyers at the 4.5. Potential floor here at Northwestern 3 that would get bought up. I foresee. I know the argument's similar to the Iowa Sparty game we discussed on Monday, as well as the Western Michigan NIU game that we mentioned yesterday, where it's hard to see these low scoring teams with these low totals covered by margin, simply based on their play style, and I get it. But I just quite frankly think this number's right. I think Minnesota is a really poor team. They've had plenty of problems. Box score frauds in, a couple of games, the Michigan State game, the Purdue game come to mind. I just don't think they're a good football team. And while Northwestern got their kind of butts handed in the game, and I know they led against Michigan last week, Minnesota certainly a step down in class for them, and a team more on their own plane. So I didn't play this game. I'm not interested in backing the Gophers right now.
All right, Bobby, let's go ahead and run down through the board.
Yep, we'll start at the top of the Saturday board, 119, 120, Rutgers, Ohio State. I saw a quick flash of under money earlier today, taking out some of the 55s. I think that was based on, Carnell Tate, missing the game once again for the Buckeyes. Maybe even some Jeremiah Smith. Could totally see a park the Bucks kind of performance here in this one. And I don't think the Scarlet Knights are really going to contribute to this one with the O-line injuries they've had. And we saw how they performed again when they step up in class, like a team like against Oregon, and how they're an offensive based team, not able to score there. Going down the board quite a bit here, 155, 156, Mizzou, Oklahoma, low total here in the low 40s. Rumors Bo Pribula might play. Personally, I'll be interested in, once we get the news, either under or Mizzou team total under. The Hardy ground attack struggled against better teams. And you either have Zollers, who's really struggled against, or a banged up Pribula with less mobility. I don't think this is the spot to back Mizzou. I think Oklahoma can handle them here, but I think it's based on Mizzou not scoring. Down the board, 190, 191, 192, Illinois, Wisconsin. Badger money is showed in the market after a couple nice efforts. Win there in solid first half against Indiana. I just think that's an interesting move, and sharp money I'm assuming sharp money that's come up called out in the market, taking that from 10.5 to 7.5. Going down a little bit further, 209, 210, Western Kentucky, LSU. Heard some interesting handicaps of this game, discussing how some of these G5 teams, it's actually beneficial for them to punt the game, and not play their starters or kind of rotate guys in. In the MAC, we saw Kent State actually sit their guys completely against some of their guys completely against Oklahoma. I think that's a trend you're going to see some of the FCS teams when they play SEC teams in this late week, just kind of, just running up the middle and just kind of getting their check and getting out, just knowing they're probably not going to win this game. And Western Kentucky has a game to make, the Conference USA title game next week. I believe it's at Jacksonville State. So I think it's an interesting handicap. By pure point spreads, I do have it a little bit short. So a little bit interested in that LSU handicap, even if it's hard to lay it with them. 213, 214, Southern Miss, South Alabama. Actually, just saw on the newswire that he's trending okay, I guess. Braylon Baxton, quarterback for Southern Miss. So surprise scratch last week, despite being available with air quotes versus Texas State. Golden Eagles got trucked in that game from the jump. Some indicator books here, at least. Yep, still there. are a little bit lower at 1.5, making me think, that his status is still in question despite the news, and that did hit the news wire, and nothing's happened in market here on that. So this is one where you just follow the news and react personally. If he's out, I would want to play under in that one. So that's the market for today.
Guys, before we jump into best bets, please click that like and subscribe button. It really does go a long way, showing that you guys like the content that we're creating, because honestly, we do it for you guys. We hit one of our best bets last night as Akron got the outright win plus the 3.5. Our other best bets from Monday night show, Hawaii plus 3, the over in South Carolina, Coastal Carolina, and UTSA plus 2.5. If you want the full breakdown on those games, just go back and listen to Monday's show. So tonight, a new best bet. We're going to play the under in Maryland, Michigan. Bobby, can you tell us more about it?
Yep, under 45.5 as the official number we'll give out here. There is one domestic shop with a better number. Definitely shop around and get that. But it's kind of simple here. Maryland's offense hasn't done much in recent weeks. Michigan, same thing. Obviously struggles on offense, but you're going to see a lot of churning clock here in this one. I think this total is a bit high. Should be in the 43.5, 44 range. Michigan obviously having the game against Ohio State next week. Maryland seeming to run out of gas. I do think Maryland has a pretty decent defense as well. So yeah, we like under 45.5 in Michigan, Maryland on Saturday.
You can follow Bobby at BobbyDigital2 on Twitter. You can follow the show at CFB900. Bobby and I will be back here Sunday night breaking down everything that happened in Week 13 and looking ahead to the last week of the regular season, Week 14. I'll be on Twitter firing away Sunday morning for Sunday morning coffee. I'll probably also do some look-ahead betting tonight and tomorrow. If you guys want to go ahead and jump in early on those. Until then, enjoy the rest of the week's games. Wishing you guys the absolute best of luck. Adios.